All right, we got to go to this interview, terrific interview with Montse Alvarado. She is currently the executive director of the Becket Fund for Religious Liberty. The Becket Fund for Religious Liberty, called God's ACLU, because they go out and fight those fights that we all read about, the wars on Christmas and all that stuff. It was created to defend the free exercise of all faiths in the United States. She's also the former editor of Alt Fem magazine, a platform for women of faith. Here is a pre-recorded interview with Montse Alvarado. Let us start with the Becket Fund. The Becket Fund is called God's ACLU. What does that mean? What does the Becket Fund do?
We are a nonprofit law firm. We've been around since 1994. We're celebrating 25 years of defending religious freedom for all. And what does that mean? We're a litigation shop, a boutique law firm that does appellate work, and we're trying to change the law to promote the true understanding of religious liberty in our country, and that is religious freedom for everyone, not for one specific group, but what the founders really intended, which is our right to seek the truth and to believe in things that even if people believe they're wrong, we have the right to believe.
Now, there's an intense feeling, especially on the conservative side of the aisle in this country, that religious rights are under attack. Does that intense feeling actually relate to anything real, or is it just paranoia?
I definitely think it relates to something real. Otherwise, we wouldn't be so busy.
Right.
I've been with Becket for 8 years and a couple of months, so I'll be able to say 9 years soon, and we have not stopped. So you can see that the attacks on religious liberty, although it seems like it's conservatives that are complaining about this, they come from both sides. It's this misunderstanding of what our Constitution actually says.
Well, give me an example of a case, please, where you feel religious liberty is under attack. A recent case.
A recent case, I can give you a couple of Supreme Court cases that are exciting. Some that have a lot of press coverage and some that don't. I'll start with the one that doesn't.
Okay.
Hosanna Tabor is one of our wonderful 9-0 Supreme Court victories. I say wonderful just because 9-0 is something hard to come by, and it just truly means that these are issues that the Supreme Court is not only willing to take to discuss, but they're willing to defend. This case, Hosanna Tabor, is about the ministerial exception. So the right of religious institutions and churches to choose their own leadership and to hire or fire them when they are not holding up the tenets of their religion in practice. This was a school that had a leader or a minister that was violating the tenets of their beliefs, and they didn't want to renew her contract. And it went all the way up to the Supreme Court. And Justice Kagan was the one who wrote in the opinion that religion serves as the critical buffer between the individual and the state. The moment that you allow the government to meddle in these very important institutional decisions, you're losing that buffer. So we like to say that we want this autonomy. You know, government is good for certain things and it's not so great for other things. And in religion, how is the government going to know who is best suited to run your church and to teach your children? That's a tough call.
You know, it's funny. I try to explain this to my non-religious friends that if the church loses its power, that they will lose the only power they have to defend their own conscience. It's a hard argument for people to get. Is there a conflict when you have issues like, for instance, gay rights, and some religious people feel that gays shouldn't be allowed to marry and they don't want to participate in that ceremony? It always seems to me very oppressive when you go to a small business like a cake shop or a flower shop and say you have to do this thing that offends your religious. Is that the kind of thing you would defend?
Definitely, and I can give you some stories of ways that we would defend it on both sides. The government shouldn't be allowed to tell you how to express your religion. These are freedom of expression issues where a cake baker or a photographer is participating in a ceremony, and it's an important ceremony for them, a religious ceremony, and they should be able to participate in those that they believe in and not participate in those that they don't believe in. And that's that live and let live principle that has allowed us to maintain this republic and what it was based on. Right. When we lose that ability to say, well, I don't necessarily agree with what you're doing, but it's good for you to have that freedom because someday you're going to disagree with me and I'm going to want that freedom as well. Right. We've lost that. And it's this tribalism of yes for me and no for you that is really putting us down a very precarious path.
You know, recently this fellow Roy Moore was, nominated to run for the Senate. And he's been a very strong advocate of things like keeping the Ten Commandments up in outside a courthouse. Recently, there was a case where a cross at a military memorial was deemed to be unconstitutional. This does seem to me like an assault on the idea that religion has a place in the public sphere. Is that something that the Becket Fund worries about, that there's this attack on any outward expression of religion?
Well, I mean, we work on this all the time. So we have expression cases for crosses. We have one in Pensacola right now that's similar, where it's a memorial. Someone drove by and said, "Oh, no, this offends me. It's this right to be offended that everyone is so excited about." The facts there are a little bit interesting. I'm not so sure that they're residents of this country at the moment when they filed that case. And there are a couple of things that make it complicated. But that right to be offended and to have these trigger warnings and all of the things we're seeing on campus now actually manifested in our society and in our everyday lives, that is that big red flag that tells you that there's something else happening here. I mean, Becket, we love our Constitution, and the Establishment Clause is a really strong piece that allows us to defend both the right to have freedom of expression and true religious liberty, and at the same time to have those limits that are necessary to avoid government entanglement. And we don't have to worry about that. The law is there, it's robust, it's strong, and Beckett's here to defend it.
Well, it seemed to me under the Obama administration that religious rights came under attack as never before. I mean, I think of the Little Sisters of the Poor being asked or forced really to pay for kinds of birth control that they disapproved of. It almost seemed to me like the administration was trying to push the boundary of government power against the power of faith. That was me looking from the outside, just a guy reading the newspaper. Was that something that you were experiencing too?
It was an unprecedented attack on religious conscience. So going back to that first point that you made about trying to get people to understand what conscience actually is, what it means, how it manifests itself in your life. Why the same year that we were really intensely fighting for the Little Sisters of the Poor, we had their oral argument, we gave our annual award to Armando Valladares. He's a survivor of solitary confinement in Castro's Gulag. And he was placed there because he wouldn't put a sign on his desk that said, "I'm with Fidel." He said, "That goes against my conscience." And that story is really telling because it shows us how in real life, when you allow government to grow and to really oppress you in these expressive ways, you're limiting yourself in situations where religion really would have been that buffer. And he lost beyond religious liberty. He lost that deep forum internum, right? That ability to be free in what you feel, what you believe, and what you think, what's in your heart and what's in your mind.
Am I right in feeling that the last 8 years under the Obama administration that those attacks increased?
Oh, yes.
No, they did. We say that very definitely. Okay.
Definitely. Yeah. It was. I hadn't seen anything like that. I don't think anyone else has. The lawsuits that we saw under the Obama administration, not just the HHS mandate lawsuit, but the last 6 months of the administration with the transgender mandate, forcing doctors to provide surgeries and hormonal therapy to young kids, and violating the Hippocratic Oath, saying just because you believe that this might not be the best treatment, if you provide it for other reasons that aren't transition reasons, you must provide this. And forcing doctors to violate their conscience is a very dangerous thing. It doesn't just manifest itself in the realm of transgender transitions. There are many other things that doctors don't want to do and don't want to participate in that they definitely shouldn't be forced to. And
has it gotten better now that that administration is over?
I wish I could read tea leaves and say that I know where this administration is going. We are still fighting over our Little Sisters cases to settle them. It's heartening to see that some other cases that are on the same principles, Jones Day just got rid of their cases and settled them, which is wonderful. I hope that we're next. And I would say that with the transgender mandate, we're hoping that it won't be defended by the administration. So I wish that I could say where it's going, but I'm happy to update you as soon as I know.
Okay. All right. Do you feel that that people are not educated enough about religion. They don't understand how it protects them, why it matters that the people have the right to worship. I mean, I think that Americans in general, if you said, do people have the right to pray in any way they want, they would say, of course, go into your church, your temple, your mosque, do whatever you want. But when you come out, then you have to stop, essentially. And they don't understand that that's not what the Constitution says, right? I mean, the Constitution protects the practice of religion. Yeah.
That difference between freedom of worship and freedom of religion, going back to the past 8 years, if you look at the difference in vocabulary, you stopped hearing freedom of religion and you started hearing this replacing freedom of religion with freedom of worship, confining it to within the walls of your church and your home. Again, that's very dangerous. And it's not what the founders intended for us to have in this country. And that's actually why we came here, why we founded this great country.
And what about the Supreme Court? Now, as you look at the Supreme Court over the last, let's go back like 10, I know you've only been there 8 years or so, but like if you go back over the last 10 or 15 years, how has the Supreme Court been on these cases overall, do you feel?
Most of the time, the Supreme Court is great. I would say the past couple of years, definitely. These are not issues that are controversial for the Supreme Court to defend. Freedom of expression, free speech in the last decade and a half has really been a popular right, and one that is, no questions asked, definitely supported, defended, advocated for, which is probably one of the reasons why it's such a crucial moment right now to see what is going to happen with the Masterpiece Cakes case and what's going to happen with this collision between the freedom of expression and the new rights that were created with the Obergefell decision. So same-sex marriage and religious liberty should not be in conflict, but the way that we have allowed it to manifest in our country, they are. And now the Supreme Court has to make this decision of how we are going to maneuver ourselves so that we can live and let live. That's the ideal outcome.
I mean, it does seem to me that, and it seems to me it started with Roe v. Wade, it seems to me that when you demand that states provide, that when you start to claim that something is a right, that most of the rights in the Constitution are negative rights. It's like the government should not do this and it should not do that. But when you start to say that you have a right to have an abortion, that you have a right to get married in a certain way, that you are actually stripping the states of power. And in stripping the state of power, you kind of strip the church of power too, because the state has no way to relate to its local, whatever its local customs and religion is.
And I'd go one step further and say you're stripping the state, but you're also stripping the individual, right? The federal government is so far removed from an individual's ability to govern themselves and to really be represented. Why would you want them making those decisions for you? Becket put out a book in 2008 on these conflicts and how ideally they would be resolved. And state-level action is preferred, if any at all is necessary, to make sure that you have the right mix of representation, like you were saying. It's an important thing to consider when you start ruling by dicta from the government, from the federal government.
Yeah. How do you guys? I have to ask. How do you guys raise money? Do you just go out and ask for it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. It seems important because you provide the legal.
For free. Oh. We're a nonprofit law firm. Charitable contributions are more than welcome.
All right. Well, Montse Alvarado, thank you very much. The Becket Fund. I have to wrap it up, but it's been a pleasure talking to you. I hope you'll come back.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
Really interesting woman, and I didn't even know. I read about that in the Wall Street Journal, but before that, I didn't even know the Becket Fund existed.